Hi, I'm Eileen Roche, and welcome to today's episode of Between Friends. I am thrilled to be here today to talk about quilting with your embroidery machine. Last week, at the end of the program, which was all about reversible piecing and a great segue to today's topic, I was confused and I said today we would be doing jewelry, but that's actually next week. Today is really all about quilting. So I hope that you saw the promotion and you know that that's our topic and that's why you're tuning in. And if you have any friends who are also interested in quilting with their embroidery machine, share this with them so they can join in the fun, bring their questions, because I'm going to have another expert with me today to handle the whole topic of quilt with your embroidery machine. Last week, we talked about reversible piecing. This week, we're going to talk about nesting designs. So that they are standalone designs that are offset in rows and columns on a quilt. And we're also going to talk about continuous line, edge to edge quilting, and how you actually connect those stitches point to point. 10 years ago, I didn't think that was possible. And now I can do it. I don't want to say with my eyes closed, but I can do it very easily. So let's welcome in today's guest, who is Ashley Jones. Ashley is our lead educator at Dime. Hey, Ashley, how are you?
Hi, Eileen. I love that you said you could, you were thinking you were going to say you could do it with your eyes closed, because I bet you just about could, as many quilts as you've done. It'd be an interesting outcome, I think.
Well, I can tell you this. I actually do quilt with my eyes closed sometimes because I dream about quilting.
I agree with that. I was dreaming about embroidery last night, so I can relate to that for sure.
It's kind of disappointing when you wake up and the project's still not done, right?
I know. It definitely is. So, but it seems like everything works great in the dream, so I do love that part.
Absolutely. Well, it's better, back in the day, I remember being in high school and college and waking up in a hot sweat, like today's that trigonometry class. And then you realized, or not class, but test, realized, oh, you just dreamt that. It's not really. Okay. Oh, let's see. Mary S. Larson, she has dreamt about digitizing. Okay, me too. And Mary, we're going to show your on the house project today. So I hope you'll stay tuned. So let's see, where is everybody watching from? We have Lynn up in Georgia, and Annette Yeager, she's home today with a bum wheel in Irving, Texas, I think she lives in. And Retha, all the way up in, where are you, Retha? Montana? I forget. She's always here, though. Love her. She is in Wyoming. I knew it was up there in the beautiful upper west. So let's see. Gosh, there's a lot to start with, huh?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's a fantastic subject. First of all, I love that we can do such a large project on our embroidery machines. And I think that everybody else is kind of intrigued for the same reason. So we really do go beyond the hoop when we're talking about embroidering, because our quilts, it can be a small project or a really large one.
Absolutely. And, we do have, there's kind of some guidelines. I don't like to call them rules about embroidery. And one of them is to use the smallest hoop available for your machine. For that embroidery design. But really in quilting, bigger is better, right? I love to have a quilt that's actually, a hoop that's actually quite a bit larger than my embroidery design, because that gives me a lot of freedom, a lot of wiggle room, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And since we're just doing those running stitch designs, it's not as stitch intensive as our embroidery designs that we are putting on other items. So this is like what we do with our sewing machine, only our hoop is holding the project and the computerized part of our embroidery machine is making the beautiful design. So we don't have to do that. So very similar to your own free motion as far as the quilt and things, but the embroidery machine's doing all the work and the hoops holding it in place.
Right. And so that guideline, smallest hoop for the design, is really recommended, because that is what gives you a stronger hold on your fabric, right? When you are doing, traditional embroidery, but not today. Not today.
And I
We'll
like
fill
how you
all
say
that
it's a
out.
guideline, because even with our embroidery designs, sometimes, we have a really long word, so we need a long
Yeah,
hoop and we've
right.
got a lot of gaps. So, it's all a guideline. So we
It's
have to
all
kind of get creative to get our embroidery to do what we want it to do sometimes. Yeah.
That's right. It's just fun. We're blessed to do what we do, don't you
Oh,
think?
oh,
I
absolutely.
know.
Definitely.
I
The
know.
funnest job I've ever had, I have to say.
Well, me too. And I've had some doozies, I can tell you that. Let's see. Hey, Dory Hobson from Naples, Florida is in the house. Always nice to
Oh,
have her here. And
yeah.
we have friends in California. Um, let's see. Oh, Donna Barshinger. She did her first 2 big edge-to-edge quilts this week.
Oh,
Can't
that's
wait to
right.
get some better tips.
Wow.
Well, Donna, if you've done 2,
Yeah.
I'm just going to guess you've done over 100 hoopings. I would guess that a big quilt would take about 50 hoopings, and you've done 2. It's probably about 100. So
Yeah.
you're pretty close to expert, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But when you talk about blessings, one of the greatest blessings in my professional career was meeting Nancy Zieman many years ago, and we were introduced by an associate who wanted me to appear on her show, and made this introduction, and we hit it off just like that.
Oh,
And we were dear friends for many years. And throughout that friendship, I also appeared on Sewing with Nancy, 17 different episodes. And my last episode with Nancy was on Quilting with Your Embroidery Machine. It wasn't supposed to be our last one, but due to her failing health at the time, that was my last appearance on her show. And that was actually in 2016. So I wrote a book on, that topic. Well, the topic that we taught on the show, not on our relationship. And that is Quilt with Your Embroidery Machine. And that's the product that's brought to you today to sponsor today's episode. And it's on special, $29.99 plus free shipping. And it's available in both a hard copy and also a downloadable copy. So either one that you prefer. If you get the download, you can enjoy it immediately after your purchase. And if it's a hard copy, well, we have to mail it to you. So either way, you'll be ready to fly with Quilt with Your Embroidery Machine. But Nancy taught me how to break down complex tasks into manageable sections. And that's why I came up with that title, Quilt in 8 Easy Lessons, because it's a task, right? You got to start at the very beginning and go to the end. And that's exactly what we do in the book. So let's just kind of take a look at the book. And I have a funny story about that quilt that's on the cover. I have it here with me, and you'll see it on the overhead cam in a moment. But the week that I went to Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, to prepare for the taping of Sewing with Nancy, was always, a special time to visit with Nancy for a couple days and prep for the upcoming appearance. And I didn't really have a good cover project. I had a couple of projects, but she fell in love with that embroidery, that quilting design that was in the collection, in the book. And we scoured her closet full of scrap fabrics and found this beautiful batik, and that's what became the cover of the quilt book. So in the book, we cover custom designs, and a custom design means it is shaped to fit an exact shape. Like it could be a diamond shape like that, or it could be a square, a hexagon, a circle, that type of thing. And we also talked about nesting designs that are set in rows that are offset every other row. So these are designs that you often see on comforters that you purchase in a retail environment. They are closed medallions. They don't connect to each other, but they are evenly spaced. And they're beautiful designs and, fast to stitch. So in the book, there are a couple of these custom designs to showcase. And then we have some continuous line. This quilt was quilted with the design that I call Happy Flower. And you'll see it in my work a lot, right? I use it all the time, don't I, Ashley?
Yeah, and rightly so. It's a really awesome design for nearly any project. So
Yeah.
it's a good one. I think they're going to love it too, Eileen. And I just had a comment about the nesting designs. We're going to see that in a bit, but I think that nesting designs is a really good visual of the quilting process rather than the continuous line, because the continuous line seems overwhelming because it looks like one large design. But those nested closed designs, you can see the individual design. So it kind of gives you that idea of, oh, that's how I get this quilted. I have to do each one of those separately in my hoop to get my entire quilt quilted. So I think it's a really good visual to start with for sure.
It is. And so I just had to share this funny comment from Reen Wilcoxon from the Embroidery Garden. She says, I want to be a quilter when I grow up. Well, Reen, you already are a quilter, girl. You just got to do it in more than one hooping. That's all.
Right. That's right. That's true. Yeah.
And we have Debbie from Philly in the house. Love that. Welcome. So glad you're here. And let's see. I did want to share that Mary S. Larson, she said she loves that book. It's what got her started with her weightless quilter. Yeah, and the weightless quilter was new at that time. So I'm glad that it helped you out. We get better at it all the time. Yeah. And, you know, several comments about Nancy Zieman and how we all learned from Nancy. And like Belle Katz said that she always enjoyed my segments on Sewing with Nancy. Me too. I mean, they were truly one of maybe the top favorite thing of my career that, you know, I've been blessed to participate in or do. So I have great memories of those. Some of them were scary, you know, in the beginning, like first time on PBS, and it was overwhelming. And I always used to kind of have some physical, you know, stress related ailment that would arrive during taping day. Yeah. If you're a female, you'll know what I'm talking about. And but you know, we got through it. You know, nobody would know. It's just something you keep to yourself, like, oh my God, is it, you know, right? You feel like you're all in knots and so forth. But that's probably a little TMI for here. But
just keeping it real, keeping it
real. But as time went on, you know, I most certainly got better with it and more comfortable for sure.
And they always turned out so wonderful. So you know, it's just that behind the scenes nerves, and everything comes together when you're live. So
right, you know, and it's so formal though, you know, PBS as compared to what we do here, Facebook Live. It's so casual, and you know, like frankly, I've got sneakers on, you know, and you know, we didn't do that up there, even though our feet weren't on camera. But you know, anyway, we had makeup artists. Kind of missed that, to be honest with you. But
I could use that.
Yeah. Okay. So we're working here, Ashley. So let's go back. Okay. So here's Happy Flower. We love that. And you know, actually, these little yellow quilts behind me, they are sporting Happy Flower. All that quilting. That's the same design. I mean, when I say I love it, I really love it. So here's another close up of it. Now, and then just a wide meandering stipple is a fast and easy design to complete, you know, a project, a quilt. That too is an all over design.
And very forgiving. I think the meandering is very forgiving because since it's supposed to look random, if you get too close or a little bit too far away with your placement, it's really not as noticeable because it's, you know, it's meant to be more of a random look. So it's a good place to start.
It is. And we'll take a closer look at those designs that are in the book, but mine are stipple designs that have convex and concave edges, so that as they, you know, fit together, you can't see hard lines, which is what you want. You don't want any hard lines, for sure. So I just wanted to share Terry Flandermeyer's comment. She was very friendly, Nancy. She really was. And you know what? As she was at a quilt show, if you had the opportunity to meet her in person, or her demeanor on television is how she really was in real life. She was just a gracious, elegant woman without any, you know, airs about her or anything like that. She was a Wisconsin farm girl and carried it to the end. Okay, so custom designs would also fit in squares and circles and hexagons. So these types of designs are also found in the book. And my quilt as you go process that we talked about last week is also included in the book. There's 2 different projects, the fleur-de-lis table runner. And that is also our my technique where you quilt first, then applique, then piece. So pretty fun. Let's take a look at how you do that. Here's that embroidery design. Doesn't look like much without the fabric, right, Ashley?
No, it doesn't. But man, add a little fabric and it gets gorgeous.
Yeah. So the first thing you do is, hoop a quilt sandwich, and you're going to stitch color 1, which is the quilting. So you're going to quilt first and then cover that hole. See the hole? You're going to cover that with a piece of applique fabric. Stitch the next color, and that will be an outline, some quilting details, and then if the design so calls for, you add another layer of applique, and you'll stitch that detail. And this one even has a 3rd layer. And then when it comes out of the hoop, literally out of the hoop, that's when you trim. So I like to make all those blocks in kind of one sitting, and then just take those, they look like a mess at that point, right? There's just big squares of fabric, and then, but when you trim away, like in front of the TV or something, you get a really beautiful block. And now it's ready to be pieced in the reversible piecing technique. It's fun, right?
Yeah, easy too. And I love the fact that it saves time. Everything's done in the hoop. And then when you take it off and you're trimming all at once, instead of having to remove the hoop and trim, put it back on, do some more stitching. So it's a nice time saver. Yeah. And it also prevents you from accidentally loosening the fabric in your hoop while you're trimming the applique portion. So
right.
Kind of a
now, Mary Ann has a question. She says, can I quilt with my machine after I put the items together? Well, you wouldn't do that for the blocks that I just showed you. But yes, if you have pieced blocks or a whole cloth quilt, you most certainly, that's what we're talking about, how you quilt those finished tops with your embroidery machine, not block by block. Let's see.
Right.
Okay. So let's go back over and take a look at that happy flower, this whole quilt. We call that the circus quilt. That is a cheater panel that is actually available on our website if you're interested. So here's the happy flower. Now what you're looking at here is 4 repeats of happy flower. And when I show you in color, you can really identify where those 4 designs are. But when they're in black and white, hard to see, right?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Gives you that look that we're all going for, but we don't have the long arm to help us.
That's right. It's awesome. Okay, now in my collection, I offer the happy flower in 2 versions, a right start and a left start. And we will eventually get to the machine and I'll show you why. But sometimes it's best there are ways to align the design in the position that you want. And I like to do that with a printed template. But to verify that stitch, the first stitch of the happy flower design, is going to connect with the previously stitched design, it's helpful to move to the first stitch of the design. And that's why I digitized 2 versions, right start and left start. Sounds complicated, but it's really not.
Right. And advancing to that first stitch to check that connection is going to, make sure that it looks like continuous line. And the nice thing about having the 2 designs is if you had the start on the same side, but you're connecting the other side, you would have to advance to the last stitch if you didn't have the left and the right start, which is time consuming to move through your stitches, unless you have some of the machines, you can actually punch in a number, the stitch count, which would make it go quicker. But still, that's still a little more time. Whether, you can just say, go to the first stitch and then check, and then, you're lined up. And so starting right away makes it much quicker for sure to have those 2 options.
Yeah. So Roseanne Hadlock says, cheater quilts are a great way to practice quilting in the hoop.
They are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because to learn quilting in the hoop, maybe you don't want to learn on a quilt top that you have poured your heart and soul into and spend an awful lot of time and money, in purchasing those fabrics, piecing the patches and so forth. So a cheater quilt or a a panel is a great way to get better or even to learn how to quilt with your embroidery machine. And, they don't have to become throwaways, but even a cheater panel can, instead of that, you could use just a beautiful piece of fabric, right? If you have a color that you love, just learn on that. If you're a navy blue girl, get like 2-3 yards of navy blue and quilt it. And then you can use that for maybe a bag, or you can even use it as a throw quilt in the, in your family room or something. Okay, let's bring Ashley back.
And the cheater quilts too. The thing that's nice about them is, Eileen, I know you're going to talk about a little bit later about getting things straight in the hoop using your block seams to do so. And our cheater quilts have a printed block, so that gives you kind of that sort of reference to keep you straight in the hoop, unlike your large piece of fabric. But yeah, great for testing. And then you still, like you said, you have a nice quilt when you're done.
Yeah. So Joanne Banco says she likes to call it a shortcut quilt. I like that. We also like to call them convenience quilts. That's a little bit more friendly than cheater quilt, right?
Yeah, you can call it I don't like to piece quilts.
Psst, Ashley doesn't like to piece. That's a secret. That's
I like
out
it if
now.
my embroidery machine does it.
That's right. You don't mind that. But I just want to share Linda Burke's comment, because she said, and I think she's back where we were talking about the stipple collection. Let me just bring that up. When we were talking about these blocks, she says, trimming is intimidating. I understand, but I'll tell you, if you lift the edge of the applique and place your scissor blade right at the edge of the stitching and just slice, you'll have perfect results. And you just push those blades around the curve of the applique, holding up the applique. That's key. And that's why it might seem wasteful to start with a larger piece of fabric, but really it makes the trimming so much easier if you have at least, half inch, something to grab onto.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Duckbill scissors help too. They do, for sure. They do. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Linda Burke loves the quilt hanging behind Ashley.
Yeah, that's a jelly roll quilt. So, and I know you have an example that you're going to be using, Eileen. But yeah, a jelly roll quilt, so much fun. And if you're not a huge fan of piecing blocks, it goes really quickly. So it's my favorite thing to do if I'm actually doing some piecing. So it's really fun.
Right.
And you don't have to, cut your fabric that you've been saving for that special project if you just buy the jelly roll and just use it up. And so it's really fun. So yeah, great one to do your continuous line on for sure. So thank you. Yeah, thanks for that compliment.
Yeah, you bet. And let's see, Joanne says, shortcut practice quilts are great to donate to senior homes, assisted living, and even, pet shelters. I mean, I hate to say that, but, they make great, fibers for pets to kind of snuggle into, how they often like to dig and so forth, and better than your carpet. Okay, so let's see. So let's take a closer look at this right start, left start thing, because, you might be like, Now, notice that on the template, I have the words right start, and they are written on there, right? So that's art, but the R is actually a color stop in the embroidery design. It's the second color stop, and you don't want to stitch it. It's there for reference for you, so when you look at it on your machine, you can immediately recognize it. That's why it's there. Okay, so let's take a look at how that connects. Do you see how the template line, the embroidery, the quilting on the template is connecting right exactly where the previously stitched quilting design ends, and which is the goal. And so I'm going to advance to the first stitch of the design and verify that it is going to connect with the previous, and the left version does the very same thing. So there we go. You can see how nice and close that is. And here are all the embroidery designs that are included in the book. So you actually get 2 of those Quilt As You Go projects. You get the really pretty flower blocks and the fleur-de-lis. And then the embroidery designs are the quilting designs that you see at the bottom of the page. There's some custom quilting there. And custom quilting, you could see some of the meandering on the lower page and so forth. So, okay, so Ashley, let's go over and take a look at the book and just kind of flip through quickly. So, because there's some, there's 8 lessons, right? So there's a whole bunch. We talk about how to prepare for quilting. First, we get through that stipple, but aren't they pretty, those pretty floral
Beautiful.
blocks? And here they are right here. And they come in 2 sizes, a 6-inch block and I think maybe 3, 6, 7, and 8-inch blocks. Mm-hmm. So your choice, depending on your project or your hoop. Okay, and then we get into, how to use that pool noodle to create to baste your quilt sandwich. And we talk a little bit about the weightless quilter, a little bit about the shorty, but that's a product we've discontinued. And then we get into the custom quilting and then the nesting. So here is where we are going to lay out our embroidery designs in a column, and then we're going to offset it so that this is our final plan.
Yeah.
So the math is in here, right, Ashley?
Yes. Yeah. The book gives you all the details for figuring out your design placement when you're using nesting designs, and steps you through the entire process for sure. So I have a little bit different way that I calculate my layout, and we'll talk about that. And that's actually the description of it there, Eileen, too, is using a program that helps you plan your quilting layout. And if you guys have seen me, you know that I'm a software girl. I love doing anything in my software. So that's my favorite way to do the planning.
So we'll get to that. There's the embroidery designs. I even talk about my labels, how I make my labels, where I place them in the corner, with the binding and so forth. So all those tips are in there. There's 8. So let's take a look at some of these fun blocks. So here's our flower, stipple, or quilt as you go, 2 different sizes, our fleur-de-lis. Now, last week, we talked about the reversible piecing where we add the sashing. And then somebody said, well, what about if you only want to do that to the top, just have sashing to the top and then add a whole piece of fabric to the back. So you can do that, and then you would stitch in the ditch from the front to quilt the back. But basically, then your back would just be quilted in squares. But, that's an option for you. You might enjoy that. Here's a table runner. That is a jelly roll, and it's, kind of longer than it appears in the camera. But, so we had some black on the ends to just kind of make it longer. But isn't that fun? It's a fast, easy way to make a table runner. And again, I did the happy flower all over this. Didn't really pay much attention to, where it lands, but it mimics some of these flowers that are in the pattern itself. And of course, the back is almost just as pretty. I love that back, that big.
I love that print. That's gorgeous. Oh, that's a really good representation of the happy flower there. You can really see the quilting.
Yes. So that's the piece that's on the cover of the book.
Oh.
And this was literally just a scrap from Nancy's fabric closet. Anyway, super fun. Great memory. The back's as pretty as the front, purple. And now here we have a cut down version of that large circus quilt, but this shows the nesting designs. So let's talk about that in software. What do you think?
Yeah, so sounds good to me. So figuring out the math for those nested designs, because they're not just connecting point to point, you do have to, make some marks so that you keep them straight. So I'll show you what I do. So again, Eileen lists all the math in the book, but I'm in our My Quilt Planner software program. So if I flip over here, here's the name. So My Quilt Planner, inside of my embroidery tool shed. But I'm going to first enter my quilt information. So my Quilt Planner is a software program that installs on your computer to help you plan the layout, whether it's nesting designs or continuous line designs. It can help you with both, or it can also help you with those block by block designs as well. So basically what you do inside of my Quilt Planner is you answer these questions about your quilt. So you put in the size, and then for this nesting design, it's actually a 6x10 design size. And so it's always a good idea to use a hoop size that's a little bit bigger. Like Eileen said, it kind of gives you some wiggle room for moving your design around in the hoop. And we don't have any sashing in this instance. So we've got a 7x12. So this block actually represents our hoop size. And so we're going to put our design inside of that block. Now I'm going to color code the quilt. So when we color code it, it actually does a repeat for us automatically so we can see what it's going to look like. And then I'm just going to reduce this opacity down so that when our design gets on top, we can actually see it really well. And so when I say okay, it puts that on my screen. So this is a representation of my quilt size, and these are my hoop sizes. So if we bring in that nested design here, so I'm in my software, but here are my designs that are in the book that you're going to get. So I'm just looking for that loop design. So this one here. So I'm going to bring that in and put it in one of these blocks. So I'm going to click the center in the cell option, and you can see this is actually the only design that's on the screen, the one that's in the center, and it automatically repeats in the other cells so that I can see exactly what it's going to look like. So we've got our first one placed. So now we need to place the second one in the intersection of our hoops, because that's where our nested design will be. So I'm going to bring that on the screen here and just position that right in the center. And then it shows that repeat on the screen. So super simple, right? So that quick, Eileen, we planned our quilt. But I will give some tips about marking. So what I would do in this instance is this quilt top, I would fold it in half. And I would mark that crosshair. So both horizontally and vertically, make your center mark. And then each one of these lines we know represents our 7x12 hoop, because that's the measurements we entered. So what I would do is I would, from my center seam here, if I were to measure out 3.5 inches to the left and the right, then I could make that mark. And then I would measure 7 inches to the right of that, and the next would be our edge of our quilt. And then I would do the same thing, 7 to the left to get these two marks here. And then for the top and the bottom, from the center, it was 12. So I would measure 6 inches up, and I would get this marked line right here. And then do the same thing. And then I've got my bottom line. And then all of those marks on my quilt are going to give me the intersection to place my nested design, but it also, the center of each of those would give me the location to put my main part of my design there. So that's an easy way to plan. In this particular size quilt, I can see, Eileen, we're going to have 15 hoopings, and this is just shy of a 36x36. So once you do that, you're going to want to save your design to make sure that it's the right size. If you've made any adjustments to the size, because I can make this as large as my hoop if I want to use my fit to sell here, that might be something that you like. You can see now the one that's in the center is larger, and the one that's on the cross areas, it's centered, or it's smaller. And so make sure you save both of them if you've adjusted the size so you've got the right size. But the last thing I'll show here, Eileen, because I think it leads into what you're showing, is printing a template. So if I select this design, I'm actually just going to copy it and put it on a blank workspace so that we see what we're working with. And this will allow me to print this design by itself. So there's my design. That's my 6x10 design that's in the intersections. And if I click my print icon here, it'll actually print an actual size template for me. So this actually, you can print on your regular printer paper, but I know Eileen and I both love to use our print and stick target paper because it's adhesive and it keeps our template in place. And I think that's something that Eileen's going to show. But when you print this, it is an actual size representation of your design. So when you go to the embroidery machine, you can use this template to make sure your design is placed perfectly. So Eileen, are you going to show this design, or do you want me to go on to the happy flower design? Which one do you have on the machine?
On the machine, I have happy flower, but let's go ahead and answer some questions.
Sure.
Yeah, so Susan Walters wanted to know, do the block size work on any size block? So all of the embroidery designs that are in the book are based on 6 by 10 inch hoops. That's the smallest hoop available for this collection. And so we did have someone, Marianne wanted to know, will they fit in a 5 by 7 hoop? Not this collection. This is for larger hoops. And Belinda wanted to know, do we put batting in it? Absolutely. These are real quilts. They have, top fabric, which may be a block or just regular, a whole cloth, whole piece of fabric, and batting and backing all in one for sure. And let's see. Brenda is working on memory t-shirt quilts, and you most certainly could use these designs to quilt a t-shirt quilt. And then Becky T wants to know, is there a specific type of batting that works best for quilting in the hoop? Well, do you have an opinion, Ashley?
I have an opinion that whatever batting you have, that's the one that will work good. That's your best option. And so really for me, Eileen, I've actually used a variety. I've used, and I know, at your recommendation, actually, I had never worked really with wool or a wool blend until I learned from you. And I really love that combination. But up until the wool blend, I would use just regular cotton batting and just, depended on the project. But any one that I've worked with, even some of the ones that are more lofty, still quilt beautifully on my embroidery machine. So,
absolutely.
And I kind of know your preference, but you go ahead and tell.
Yeah, well, I really do like wool batting. And the reason why I like it is you have the same warmth of cotton without the weight. And so, that's just a personal preference. But it's pricey. So I often use warm and natural cotton, all cotton batting. I don't ever use polyester. So it's either cotton or wool for me. Someone asked last week about bamboo. And although I haven't done a whole cloth in bamboo, I've done smaller blocks, and it is a lovely batting. I just don't have it accessible to me. So let's see. Connie Nelson wants to know, what do you do with the thread tails on the back? Well, that's a personal preference. And when you are quilting with your embroidery machine, so these are just running stitches with one tie in and one tie off, then I really don't worry about any special treatment to that. In fact, I just did a beautiful baby quilt for my soon to arrive granddaughter, and I didn't mess with pulling any thread tails up to the top or the back or any of that. The machine ties them off, and then I just trim, and it's no big deal.
Yep.
How about you, Ashley?
Yeah, same here. I don't really worry about it. And really, it's not so noticeable. Our machines are so advanced these days that the knot is really small and it looks really nice on the back. And, I don't really even notice it, especially if you choose a busy printed fabric on the back. I probably won't even be it's find those tails to trim them if you have a fabric that has a pretty busy print.
Right. And so that is kind of key, if it's something, two things. If it's really going to bother you, if you're very particular about your quilting, then yes, turn off the trimmers, pull up the bobbin thread before you start a design, and take a couple stitches and then, trim it away. But the other way to do it is to select a busy back. Just make sure your colors are all going to work, right? We had so with Joe on about a month or so ago, and he talked about, think about contrast. So you have your quilt top, let's say it's a very light colored quilt. You don't want to use a dark background, a dark backing, because now whatever thread you use is probably going to bleed through to the other side.
Yeah.
a
Yeah, you
balanced
have those
stitch.
little polka dots kind
Yeah,
of.
you kind of have polka dots. You know, you're putting
Yeah.
holes in the fabric. Let's not forget that, right?
Yeah,
So anyway,
yeah. You'll see a little bit of the, the bobbin on the top.
yeah.
You'll see those little polka dots, and then the same is true on the back.
Mhm.
So I definitely agree with that. Blending your threads. So instead of using a black and a white, maybe using a white and a gray or a black and a gray
Right.
would soften those little
Mhm.
dots. So blending your colors, I think, is a good way to make sure you don't see
Yeah.
that on the opposite side. Yeah.
And so let's see, Jessica Gould wants to know, is the software, what software is that? It's My Quilt Planner, and it is available for purchase over on dzgns.com. So, and Gayla, it's great software. When you purchase from Dime, you get free lessons with your purchase. So
Yeah.
don't be afraid to purchase software from us. Okay, let's see. And Debbie wanted to know what kind of software. It is Dime's My Quilt Planner. Yep.
Yeah.
And Sandra says that our programs entice me to quilt. Good, good, do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I have to say, quilting with my embroidery machine is probably the most rewarding type of embroidery that I think I've ever done, Eileen. I think when you're
Yeah.
done with something so massive that was done with, just your embroidery hoop, like you just stand back and you're really proud of yourself, I have to say, when you complete that. So
Yeah.
it's very rewarding to get that done.
Yeah.
So if you haven't tried it, I sure hope that this does
Yeah.
inspire a lot of people to give it a shot.
Absolutely. My husband and I sleep under a quilt that I made every night, and it warms my heart to know that. Every time I, pull it up close to my neck, I think about all the love that you pour into a project like that, right? Especially
Absolutely.
when you know where its intended use, right? Normally, when we make a gift for someone, we know it's going to go in their home, maybe in their RV or in a child's room or on their own bed or wherever. And, so it's a prayerful activity, right? You really think and concentrate on that person as you're making it. So when you make it for yourself, it's kind of the same way, right?
Right. Yeah, and I feel like as embroiderers, so often we don't do things for ourselves. We always make and give away. So it is nice to do something for yourself and keep it from time to
Yeah.
time if that's not normally what you do.
Right. And Retha, you most certainly can use all of our software with a Mac.
Mhm.
Absolutely. They are Mac compatible.
Yeah.
Let's see. Mary Ann wants to know, do you need a stabilizer when you hoop? Well,
No,
you need
not
it
with
when
a
not when
sandwich.
you're quilting, right?
Right. Yeah. If you've got a quilt sandwich in there, no stabilizer. So you've got 2 layers of cotton and you're batting and you're just stitching a run stitch. So think of it like we said in the beginning, you're kind of like your free motion. Like we don't use anything extra with free motion quilting. It's the same kind of process, only the embroidery machine is creating the design for you. So no stabilizer.
And of course, what we're talking about here today are running stitches. These are quilting designs, just like you would expect on a long arm, same thing. So if we were adding satin stitches or complex fills, then of course we would have
Mhm.
stabilizer in the hoop, but not for just quilting.
Yeah.
So I guess we could go over to the machine now and kind of show, right?
Yeah.
So I'll head over there.
So I
I
think so you're going to show happy flowers, right? So we're going to see the actual process on the quilt that Eileen takes to get her designs perfectly lined up. So if you're kind of thinking that it's not all clicking just yet, I think what you're about to see is going to show exactly those steps that you need to do. So
That's
yeah,
right.
it's nice. I can see your design there, Eileen.
Yeah, so I have it on the screen and I'm not sure if you can actually determine on the screen, but it's
We
upside
can.
down. It's been rotated 180 degrees because I'm on my second half of the quilt. And I have my print and stick Target template paper template that, I put through my printer, printed that actual template that actually showed you how to do a My Quilt planner. And I have positioned it on my quilt. And I concentrated on connecting this first stitch with the design that's previously stitched. So I'm going to show you one of the ways that I like to, once I have that laid down and then I smooth my template over my fabric, I go into the trace feature. I think that's what it's called. And I select, my needle right now is in the center position. So now I'm going to go north. I want you to watch the machine. It will move, and I keep an eye on the foot, making sure it stays on that vertical crosshair. And I could just, I just want to make sure that that line stays centered in the foot. And if it does, then I know I'm square on the quilt. That's what's important to me. And then I'm going to advance to the first stitch. And now we can see that the needle has moved over to the first stitch. And, I can lower that presser foot. This is a really fancy machine. So I think I have a laser beam a little dot that I can turn on, and it will show me visually with a little green arrow exactly where that stitch is going to drop. Now, if you don't have that, you can lower your needle and see if it's going to hit that first stitch. And if not, then you can move the design, a stitch or two to determine, to connect it to the original line of stitching. Now, also on this machine, now I'll have to go back to 0. So let's go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to turn on the projector, because this is a really fancy machine. And the projector first illuminates the design right in the center. But I'm concerned with the connection point. So I'll move that image down to the area where I want it to see. And when I do that, I actually remove my template at that point, because I have, it's easier to view the connection without the template. And I can see I'm off, like 1 stitch, just like maybe 1 stitch. And so I can use the jog keys on the machine to move the design exactly where I want it. And again, we can verify if we don't trust all these gadgets, we can always go to the first stitch. And now when I lower that presser foot and the needle, it is right there. It is right there, which I love.
Yeah, so
How fun
easy.
is that?
It is. I love that. Oh, you're going to let it go.
Yeah. So we'll just let that stitch a little bit.
So Eileen, we have a couple of questions. So someone wants to know, let me find it again. So Pat asked what size hoop you're working with, and is it magnetic? I do know it's our magnetic hoop, but I'm not sure what size you're working with there.
Yeah, that's the 9.5 by 14 inches.
Nice. Yeah, very nice. And then Sue Sweeney is saying, can you explain the start, the left and the right start? And we did that already, Sue, so if you have to back up and get the details, but basically what was said, that you need to advance to that first stitch and check your placement like Eileen just did. So the right start and the left start allows you to advance to the first stitch and not have to go to the last stitch from time to time when you're connecting the opposite side. So it just, Eileen has done that in the designs in the book, because it makes it so much easier, and it's really faster to check that placement, I think. Right, Eileen?
Yeah, so here, we have the letter R, so that means it's going to start on the right. The first stitch that it's going to take is here, which is going to connect with a design that is in this location. If this template had an L, and there is a design with the L in the book, then the first stitch would be here, and the existing design would be on this side. Yeah. So that's why, and you may not like that technique, so just use whichever one you prefer, but it just makes it easier.
Yeah, and Sue is saying, would it still work with a start in the middle? And the answer is yes. If you've got a quilting design, it's just easier lining it up. And honestly, if your design is in the middle, it is likely that it's not even starting there. It's just that's the first position, and then usually your machine will advance to the first stitch. The first stitch, right? Is not necessarily the middle. Some designs maybe so, but yeah. And then I love this comment from Joanne too about the think of the money that you're saving each time doing a quilt on your embroidery machine. And I do think that's the case, but I also think that sometimes it can be a time saver too, because if your quilter is, say, backed up a month, it's going to take you some time to do this, right, Eileen? I mean, it's not like you're going to do this in just an hour if you're doing a large quilt, but still, if your quilter is backed up a month and you can't get it done, you could do this in a day or two, or maybe a weekend, and that's still quicker, right?
Right. And you have total control over it. Now, Sandy Bowl wanted to know, does one sheet of print and stick continue to stick to the fabric? So yeah, absolutely. I'm able to do one template for an entire quilt. I mean, it's really tacky. It is really tacky. It will lose some adhesive. It's not that it loses it. It's that lint from the fabrics begins to cover the adhesive. So then you have less tack, less tack, right? But yeah, I mean, one will definitely last an entire quilt.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. In fact, I mean, it's so tacky. When I take it off the protective paper, I usually like place it on my belly and kind of do a little, make it a little less tacky. Let's see.
Yeah, that way it's easier to remove off of the quilt when you're there.
Yeah.
For sure.
Cecilia Chandler, she has a long arm, but she likes using her embroidery machine better. Wow. Don't tell your long arm company.
Right.
Let's see. Patty Graves wants to know, do you still need to baste? That's a great question. I never baste when I am quilting with my embroidery machine. And the reason I don't baste is because the magnetic hoop really kind of does the basting for me, right? It's holding that quilt sandwich along the perimeter of the sewing field, which is the whole main reason why you baste, is to attach your fabric to the stabilizer. And since we have a quilt sandwich, all three layers together, we're not going to baste. And in fact, basting, it can cause problems when you're hooping, because the tension that is created with the magnetic hoop, as you travel all over the quilt, you are smoothing out those quilt layers as you go. Now, I say that, but maybe I'm confused, Patty, because I'm answering you like you're asking me, do I baste in the hoop, the baste feature that's in the hoop? I do pin baste my entire quilt.
The 3 layers together.
The 3 layers. And I have a really great technique that you use pool noodles for, and that's in the book. So yes, I do baste, but I don't use the basting feature on the machine.
Yeah. And the basting machine, on the feature on the machine, you'd have to pick all of that out once you were done. And it's not even necessary. So yeah.
So here, let's see. Do you start, Debbie Caldwell wants to know, do you start quilting in the center of the quilt? Absolutely. You start quilting in the center and work your way out into zones. So you're going to work center to, how I do it, center to right edge, up a row, center to right edge, up a row. And then, come back to center and, below, right? Do the right side of the quilt. Once that's complete, we flip the quilt entirely. So now the unquilted half is under the needle, and we repeat all that in the same fashion. And we rotate our embroidery design.
Yeah, so kind of a quarter, like you're saying you work with like a quarter of the quilt at a time, like the upper right quarter, the lower right quarter-ish. And so, and then flip it around. And that's a good point that you said too, Eileen, about don't forgetting to rotate your design, because that's got me into trouble before.
Oh yeah, me too, for sure. Okay, Betty, Patty Graves, I'm glad we got that straightened out. I'm sorry when I, anyway, kind of messed up that question. But let's see, someone had a really great comment that I'm planning on quilting. Sue Sweeney, she's going to quilt a half a yard of fabric so she can use it for bag making. So I thought I'd show you. I did that with, now this design's not in the book, but it's in my quilt planner. And I'll kind of come up a little bit. You could see that really cool geometric pattern. Isn't that fun? I mean, beautiful. I quilted this piece, and it's the width of the fabric. It's 1 yard, 45 inches wide by a yard. And I quilted this in 30 minutes. I mean, and that's going to be a bag, There's the other side. Sometimes I have to piece my backs because whatever. Now you're seeing all my secrets.
That's a good point about quilting for the bag, though, Eileen. My nearest fabric store is 45 minutes away, so I can make my own quilted fabric in 30 minutes. So Good point.
Awesome. Yeah. Let's see. April Taylor, she just finished quilting a quilt top from 2020, and she's up to hand stitching the binding. Can you go over the threads to avoid the knots on the bottom? Yeah, well, we did talk about that, April, and Ashley and I really don't care.
Yeah.
So
care. Yeah.
we just go with it. We both use kind of top of the line machines. They don't really make a messy back. We are quilting a continuous line. One tie in, one tie off. There are not a lot of knots. Now, if I am doing embroidery designs or intense quilting, like some of those quilt as you go, the fleur-de-lis, yeah, maybe you don't want to have a back on at the time. You would just do that whole technique with the batting and the top fabric, or you add a busy print on the wrong side of the blocks, and nobody will ever know it. Let me see if I have a busy print here. Yeah, here. So let's go to the overhead cam, I guess, so we can get a better look.
And the other thing too, I was thinking, Eileen, is if you're using your closed designs, like we were talking about, you really only have one spot for tie on, tie off.
Yeah. So here's, same block, right? Here it is from the front. You can see how really pretty it is. But let's look at all those little details, right? Tiny, tiny details. So there are definitely some tie-ins and tie-offs on this embroidery design. So the wrong side is going to have that, but you can't see them. This is a busy print, and it's pretty from the back. Perfectly fine with me.
Nice. Yeah.
Let me tell you something. Everything has a wrong side, right? It just does. And, if you're making a gift for someone and they're looking at the back side, maybe you don't want to get them on your gift list anymore. Okay.
Right.
Okay, I want to talk about the jelly roll, but let's answer some of these questions. So
Sure.
Judy Driver says, what's the difference between my quilt planner and my quilt embellisher?
Good
You
one.
want to answer that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the name really gives you the biggest clue, Judy, just to help you remember. So the My Quilt Planner, think of that for planning the quilting design layout on your quilt. So it's not planning the piecing, but it is planning the quilting design layout. And then My Quilt Embellisher is really a lot of embellishment features. You have the ability to create your own custom shaped quilting designs. You can create applique for your quilt in that software. It has built-in crazy quilting stitches, those heirloom type stitches, and also frames for quilt labels. So think of the things that we use to embellish our quilt, and that is the types of things that you would do in my Quilt Embellisher. So think of Quilt Embellisher too as a custom type quilting that you would do. You could create quilting specifically for your exact quilt. So
yeah, and Diana Streeper wants to know, how do you order things from us? So maybe my team can, in the comments, add links. We have a website, which is dzgns.com, and you'll find all of our product is over there. So hopefully you can find that. And let's see. Diane Constance has my quilt planner, and she loves it. Great. Absolutely love it. Yep. I like both those programs, My Quilt Embellisher and My Quilt Planner. You use them for different reasons, but they're awesome. Okay.
Yeah,
so
and you can create, and the two I wanted to point out too to Laura or whoever it was that was asked, I can't remember now. So Judy Driver, if you create your design in My Quilt Embellisher, you can use it in the planning features in My Quilt Planner. That's a lot of quilts, so I had to make sure I said that correctly.
I know. It's really hard to name products here at Dime, because our company name is Designs and Machine Embroidery. And so then, you have design collections, and then you have software program. Oh, man, it's
a lot.
It's a challenge. Do they run independently?
With all of our software, I think that we've done really good with the names though. So like if you read into the name of the program, and it gives you the biggest clue as to what
its main function. Right. Yes, you're right. Yeah. And April Taylor wants to know, do they run independently? They sure do. They're all standalone programs. They will load into Embroidery Toolshed, which is our free software that enables you to size an embroidery design and print templates. And so it's kind of like our, the tool shed, right? That's where all the tools go. So our software programs go in there, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the best explanation.
Yeah. Okay, so let's over here at the on the overhead cam. I have a jelly roll quilt hooped, and now here's an 8x12 hoop. So this is a good example of using seam lines to make sure we are square in our hoop. So I am making sure that the seam hits the right frame at the 4.5-inch mark, and the same on this side. And if it doesn't, then I can just lift that frame and then scooch the fabric just a little bit so that it does. And now they're all on the 4.5, both the right and the left. And then, so now I know I'm square in the hoop, right? So then I can take my embroidery design and I would position this in the hoop, making sure that my horizontal axis is aligned with the seam. And now when I go to that machine, I am going to be dead center. Oh, I know I'm going to be square, not only in the hoop, but also on the quilt. And then as I advance, I would continue to use that very same method. I would move my template over. Of course, the top would be lifted, but when I place it back down in position, I would make sure that equal increments are being hit with a seam on both sides of the ruler. So that's the beauty of those rulers. That's why it doesn't matter what kind of measurements are on those rulers, whether they're imperial or metric, doesn't matter. You're just, 5 and 5. Doesn't matter if it's millimeters, centimeters, inches, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Sharon Wills Joan wants to know, with edge-to-edge quilting, how close do you get to the edges? Love that. Well, it depends. In my book, I always include, on my collections, I always include a half of an embroidery design, like right here. So that's half of a happy flower. So that when you get to the edge, you have a smaller embroidery design, same scale, that you can place so that you don't have like a big gapped open area. Now, go ahead.
Or stitching. Oh, sorry. Or Eileen, the half design prevents you from stitching full design, which winds up majority on your batting too.
Yes. Can we bring her up?
Yeah.
Yes. And so some of it, you can go right off the edge, which is why you want to make your quilt back and batting larger than your top. You have to plan for this. The beauty of a long arm is you have total control of where you're going with an embroidery design. Even their software will squeeze and tweak and keep the scale, all kinds of great stuff like that. But, with an embroidery machine, we have a rigid sewing field. We can't change that. We can't tell the machine to do something that it's not programmed to do. But we can provide it with embroidery designs that are smaller, So that's what you'll find in this book. And in most of our collections, that's what we do.
Yeah.
But other than that, if you have digitizing software, well, we can teach you how to chop things in half and so forth.
That's true.
That's another whole lesson.
Yeah.
Let's see. How much extra material and batting do you need? I'm pretty generous. I like 4 extra inches on each side. Now, not always possible, but even 2 is, really minimum that I would add. And let's see, April Taylor, she wants to know, she's having some trouble with her Mac on the tool shed. And Deborah Jones, I don't know if you knew who that is, April, but she is our in-house expert for sure. So she said, did you download the free Mac translator? And that is a program that you need to install on your Mac prior to installing any of our other Dime software. And once you do that, all of our software will be read on by your Mac. Mm-hmm. Yep, let's see. How close to the edge do you start the design at the beginning of the quilting? Well, we start in the center. That's our first hooping, is the center, and we work towards the way out. Now, and in my quilt planner that Ashley showed us how to use, we'll know how many designs will fit across. And because you're in my quilt planner, and if you're using any of our embroidery designs, you open up that design in its native format, which our software is C2S, and you can resize all of the designs. So like on that nesting, that pretty loop, you know, you would resize every single one so that you know they fit perfectly. And
Exactly.
you would change that for every quilt, right?
Yes. And if you're planning in My Quilt Planner, then your design is not going to really run off the edge of your quilt, because you're planning in that program your quilt top size. And so then you're making your quilting design fit perfectly within that area that you set. So you won't have your design going off the edge. And if it does, it'll be just slightly.
Right. And so Sharon says, do you tape the top fabric down, because her foot catches the fabric? So sure, tape it down. You could use a piece of our adhesive sew and wash. So that's a water soluble adhesive stabilizer, just a tiny little strip. And you can, you know, stick the top fabric down to the batting and just cover the area where it's going to hit the foot. Or do what I do, and I sit at the machine with, you know, because these designs stitch in like 2-3 minutes. So you really don't have time to get up and go do anything. You're just rehooping. We say we're embroidering. Actually, we're rehooping. That's what we're doing. Yep. So I just kind of hold, you know, pair of tweezers and just hold that the fabric down while it travels across. So, but it's fine. Are there PDF instructions included with My Quilt Planner? There sure are. And a free lesson. No, and Deborah, it is a standalone software program. You don't need another software program, but it comes installed in Embroidery Toolshed. So all of our software is powered by Embroidery Toolshed. So because once you buy one, you may decide to buy another software program, and then yours will just be loaded in it. Hey, but you know what else is really cool? When you load our free software, Embroidery Toolshed, you get demo versions of all of our software programs. So you can go in and play. You can't save a design, but you can explore and play at your heart's desire, right?
Yeah, which is a very good point, because then you can explore any of them. It gives all of the features. The only thing you can't do on our trial version is save, but you can play with every feature that's available in every piece of our Dime software. So that's a good point.
Yeah. So Laura says, when I download something, how do I get it into the tool shed? So Laura, I'm not exactly sure what you are referring about something. So let's say it's an embroidery collection that you purchased somewhere. So you would download that, and it would download probably, if you're on a PC, onto your download folder. And if it's a zip file, you'll have to unzip it on your desktop. But otherwise, you in Embroidery Toolshed, you go to File, Open, and locate that download, whether it's on your C drive, on your desktop, wherever it is, and then just bring in each individual embroidery design. Yep. If it's a software program that you purchase from us, like a new software program, Ashley, why don't you show them on the screen where the shopping cart is, so they know how all that happens?
Sure, I can do that. So down here in the bottom right-hand side, I've got these little tabs, and the shopping cart is the area that lists all of our Dime software. Now, the ones that have the check mark beside them are the ones that I own. But if you have a program that you want to play with that does not have a check mark, if you click this ellipse option here, that's for more options. And then you will actually have an option here that says try. Mine doesn't have try because I already own it. And so you can choose to try it, and then it'll have like a little timer here to let you know that it's a trial version. But you can actually play with it as long as you want, and it will be active until you close out your Embroidery Toolshed and reopen it. And then you could try it again if you wanted. It just doesn't allow you to save. So it gives you the ability to try all those features. But that's down here. This little green shopping cart lists all of the software, which is also the place, if you already have the Embroidery Toolshed and you want to activate one of these, when you click this button, if you don't have the check mark beside it, you'll have a little option that says to activate. Then when you click activate, you'll enter your serial number, and then it will add all of the features of that program that you've purchased to your Embroidery Toolshed, keeping them all in one place. So really easy. I love, Eileen, now that our software is all combined into one location, because each piece has some unique features that I used to have 2 or 3 pieces open and
Right.
then go to that feature in one program, save my
Yeah.
design, open it in another one. And now with the tool shed, it's basically put all of my features in one location. So every time you purchase a different piece of dime software, you're basically adding those additional features to the embroidery tool shed and can use them all in one place, which is
It's
very
awesome.
powerful.
I love that. And it also makes updates so easy to do, because when when we have an update for any software, it's
Right.
just one update. So if you have multiple dime software programs, then you would have had to update Perfect Embroidery Pro, My Quilt Planner, My Quilt Embellisher. They would have been all separate activities. Now you just get a notice you have an update and all of them are updated. And
Yeah.
updates keep you compliant with Microsoft and Mac operating system, in addition to some freebies that we give for periodically throughout the year. So it's important to do the updates for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Let's
Yeah.
see. Oh, Sharon here. Look at Sharon Jones. She is loving doing edge to edge once she got her first magnetic hoop. Isn't
Oh,
that great?
good.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah, it makes it so easy. And I didn't even show, but we should go back over to the machine to show how you advance the fabric by lifting that top frame
Yes.
and not taking the whole quilt off the machine.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, we talked about we're not really quilting. I mean, we're not really stitching, we're rehooping, right? Well,
Yeah.
imagine if we were rehooping and taking it off the machine. It's
Yeah.
horrible. Okay, so
Yeah.
here, I'll step over to the
Oh,
machine.
perfect. Yeah, I definitely agree too with Eileen. The magnetic hoops, you can quilt on your embroidery machine with your standard hoops, but the magnetic hoop, it makes it quicker and easier. And it kind of like, a lot of our tools here at Dime, that's what we strive to do, is make the process easier and simpler. But when you're quilting with your embroidery machine, you don't have to take the entire quilt off in order to reposition your standard hoop if you're using the magnetic hoop. And I think that's what Eileen is going to show you there.
So here I am at the machine, and I've already stitched that design that we just showed how to center. And so now I'm just going to lift that top frame and place it in a vertical position over the head of my machine. And then I'll advance my fabric to the next design. Now, of course, I would remove that pin, which I had pin basted. So I would remove that, place my template down in the position that we showed you earlier, and then just drop my top frame in place, and I make sure that I pull on the fabric. This is the beauty of the magnetic hoop, because in a standard hoop, you can't pull on the fabric, but in a magnetic hoop, that's really what they're designed for. So now I'm nice and flat in the hoop. I would have my template here, making sure everything's centered, doing those steps that I showed you previously, but now I'm ready to stitch without taking it off the machine. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's the biggest key. It can be so cumbersome managing an entire quilt, taking it off of the machine, getting to a flat area to do that rehooping. So if you can avoid that, it's a huge time saver for repositioning right at the machine. I love that.
Yeah, it's awesome. It really is. Yeah, they're just great.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. Patricia Hale says, so she has a long arm since getting the magnetic hoop, shows small projects by the embroidery machines and large projects by the long arm. Good for you. That's,
Oh, that's smart. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if I can talk my husband into another sewing room. I already have 2 rooms in the house. Oh, no.
Maybe.
Never know. Maybe. If I'm nice, right?
That's
Okay.
right.
Well, hey, we have to do on the house, which is so fun. So let's do that. We don't, but first we'll just show you the designs that are included in Quilt with Your Embroidery Machine in 8 easy lessons. So we could get that up. Did I lose it? Okay. Yeah.
Oh, nope, that's mine.
That's you. Yeah. I must have lost my PowerPoint. So let's just, Ashley, you tap dance for a minute.
All right, sounds good. Well, you know what? I could show those in the software. So here, I'll give you guys a software tip. If you own our Dime software, over here in my design library, if I do a right mouse click, it will give me the option to show content, and it just went away from me. So I'm going to do right mouse click, and there we go. If I do show content, it'll actually bring up the folder where those designs are. And so any minute now, maybe it'll open and I can show. But as it's thinking, I wonder if it opened and I didn't even realize it. But here down in the bottom, so you get the happy or the flower design, the spunky flower, I think it's called, and the fleur de lis for your in the hoop projects. You're going to get the loop, the double loop that we were using for nested, with the half loops, top and bottom, a diamond, and this single loop here that are perfect for nesting. You get the happy flower design and half happy flowers, this cute little hexie, and even this meandering design. So I love the meandering, very forgiving when you're starting. And then you get this cute little orange peel as well. So lots of options. Eileen, I think you've covered every type of quilting. So the quilt as you go, the nesting designs, the continuous line, and even the custom are all represented in this one Quilt with Your Embroidery Machine and 8 Easy Lessons book. So
right, absolutely, it's awesome. So we do have some fun questions. Let's see. Well, Patty Graves wants to know: can we convert art to Pez with your software?
Yeah, you can. So you can read art into our software, and then you can save it as a PES file. So yes, you can read it, and you just can't write to art.
Right, but you can write to EXP, which is just
correct.
Fun.
Yeah.
And Lynn has 2 large rooms and still needs more. I feel your pain.
Right.
Feel your pain. And Marty Kilroy, you mentioned a book. Where can you find it? We're going to run that ticker down the bottom, that link where you can purchase Quilt with an Embroidery Machine in 8 Easy Lessons. And Wendy K says, thanks for all the great info. She feels empowered to finally get those quilt tops quilted. That's awesome. I love that. Oh, yeah. And Kit, this is we always forget to mention this, but because we take it for granted. So she loves, the one thing she loves about the magnetic hoops is you don't get hoop burn. There's no hoop lines around any of the fabric that you hoop, which is awesome. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, so we are, let's see. I wanted to share Mary S. Larson's beautiful work that she did with on the house embroidery designs. So in the upper left corner is the winter tree. And then last week we had the spring tree, and she changed the embroidery design to different colors to make it a spring, summer, and a fall, which is just beautiful. Did a great job, Mary S. Larson. Love that.
Yeah, that's a great use of the tree. Yeah. I love how she even added the falling leaves to the fall tree. Very
cute. She did all that. She did all that on her own.
Yeah.
Rock star. Love this. Okay, this is this week's. So we have the swirly egg. Isn't that lovely?
That is gorgeous.
It's so elegant. It's really lovely. And our Deborah Jones, she's the one who picks these designs, oversees this artwork, the thread color selection. I mean, it's a lot of work. She's been, there's 52 designs for the year. So she's done a great job. But the lesson in this, in the swirly egg, is the beautiful digitizing. You'll notice when you stitch it out. Remember, this is a free download for you. So when you download it, throw it on your machine, stitch it out, and you'll notice there's hardly any tie-offs. Of course, there's different colors, so you're going to have a tie-off, but it's digitized so well, so professionally, that the foot just basically skirts all over the swirly egg, just stopping occasionally to change thread. Really pretty, right?
Beautiful. Yes, that is gorgeous. Perfect for Easter.
Yeah, right. That time of year for sure. And we're getting nice comments. Belinda says that she loves the thread. Michelle says it's beautiful. Cecilia Chandler loves it. And Mary, Joanne Banco, just all of it. It's lovely. And Kirsten Swanson really complimented Mary S. Larson on her seasonal variations on the tree. Just lovely. And there's our download, where you can go get it. So make sure you take advantage of it. And the whole year is still available. And we're going to leave them up all year. So if you've missed any of the designs previously, you can go get them.
Yeah.
So last week, I promised you that we would do jewelry. Well, we are really going to do jewelry next week. So on Thursday at 1:00, we're going to do embroidered earrings. And we're going to stitch them out. We're going to rinse them away. We're going to add some embellishments. Oh, I can't wait. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. It's really going
That
to be
sounds fun. Sounds like you're going to have some fun crafting on Facebook Live next week.
Absolutely. Well, we really appreciate everyone for joining us today, your time. And Ashley, you are a great guest. I have to give you a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Wasn't she great, folks? Don't you
you.
just love it when Ashley's in the house? Give her a thumbs up or a smiley face so she knows how much we enjoy her. So, Ashley, thanks again. It's really my pleasure. And, everyone have a great week. Keep stitching. We'll see you next Thursday.
All right.